No clapping, keep on eating. So I would like you to take your seats, and we want to keep the program rolling. But keep on eating your salads. We can handle a little clinking. Servers, I want to thank you all for doing a great job. We really appreciate your service and help. So thank you for all you do, and we appreciate you doing it so quickly and efficiently. So I want to share a little bit about why we're here tonight and why I started the Jack Kemp Foundation in 2009. My dad passed away in May of 2009, and during the 2000s, Dad and I worked together. Our firm was called Kemp Partners. I was privileged to help Mom as Dad was dealing with melanoma in his last 5 or 6 months. And one of the memories that I cherish and hold dear is from when I was 9 years old. My parents took me to Detroit, Michigan. It was 1980, and there was this big event happening. It's called the Republican National Convention. And I wasn't a sour 9-year-old or 10-year-old, but I didn't know what was going on. And they took me into the auditorium where the convention was being held. And I didn't know what to expect, but I walk in and I look on the floor from the stands up high, and I see signs, blue signs with white lettering that said Kemp. And there were thousands of them covering the floor, and I was 9 years old. This was stunning to me. How did they know I was coming? Obviously, it wasn't for me. And at that time, I started playing youth football when I was 9 years old, but I'd been playing soccer for about 3 or 4 years. And it was interesting, when I'd play soccer, my mom would come, my sisters would come, my brother, he was in college, and I think he came to one game. But my dad never made one of my soccer games. All of a sudden, when I started playing football, he was there every single Saturday. And I think I realized that night in Detroit that when Dad was missing my soccer games, it wasn't only because he thought that soccer was a foreign socialist import. He was actually doing a bunch of work. That work never stopped him from coming to any of Jeff or my football game. Jennifer and Judith, I know they missed some ballet and tennis and piano, but I realized that Dad was working. I realized that in 1980, he was on the precipice of the biggest tax rate reduction that our country had had. And he believed in the power of ideas, and translating ideas into policy was what he was tasked with doing. And he believed it was a high calling. Look, we all know that our political environment is poisoned right now. At the Jack Kemp Foundation, we exist because we want to lift people's eyes to what our country can be. We believe that Dad understood well, and we happen to agree with him, that our founding documents have created a system that isn't perfect, but when the Constitution says in order to build a more perfect union, it acknowledges that the country's not perfect, we're not perfect, but we are about the business of building a more perfect union. We'll never get there, but we can't stop aspiring and aiming for what is right and true and good. And that's what this nation stands for. And I understood when I was 9 years old that that's what my dad was doing. We ate dinner every night at 8:30. When I got to college and at the cafeteria was open from 5 to 7, I was like, what is going on? My mom made sure that Dad could get home from Congress, and he did a lot of these dinners, but he always was home by 8:30. We had dinner, and our family was whole in the midst of, crazy political times, not quite as crazy as these, but our family was whole, and Mom, thank you again. So the power of ideas, the ideas that fuel this radical experiment in democracy. That was my dad's passion, And that's what our passion is at the Jack Kemp Foundation. His distinctive politics of optimism, freedom, and growth was already making its mark in the 80s, even in the 70s. People called him crazy. Some people called his economic theories voodoo. But above all, however crazy people said his ideas were, they knew and understood that his belief in the boundless promise of the American idea, the idea that the condition of your birth and my birth does not determine the outcome of your life or my life, right? That's the American idea. That's what's enshrined in our founding documents. And that's what drove him every day that he was in Congress. So when people ask me, as they often do, man, Jimmy, what on earth would your dad think of politics today? And yes, they did ask that question of me before 2016. His message would be the same. Now, politics is messy, it's competitive, it's tough, but we have got to remember and hold our representatives accountable for leading us toward the American idea, towards that optimism and that hope. And more than anything, it was a message of growth and inclusion. Growth for all, not some, inclusion for all. And his ability to speak from the heart, his commitment to equality of opportunity is what the Kemp Foundation and our program, the Kemp Forum, has made the centerpiece of our work. You'll be hearing more about that as the evening goes on. But equality of opportunity is the way we describe the importance of making sure that the promise of America is delivered upon. And tonight, we're honoring somebody who represents that, has an incredible story, and it's a real privilege to be here. And there's no doubt when I look around this room, and so many of you are so nice to me and the rest of my family members, there's a phenomenal reservoir of goodwill. My dad died in 2009. The last time he was in office in government was 1993. And people still come up to me and they remember Jack Kemp. And that is awfully nice. And there's a duty with all of that goodwill. The duty is to not let it go to waste. And each of us has a legacy, the legacy of our parents, the legacy of teachers, coaches, whoever. Our duty is to not let what's been given to us go to waste. So, you can clap, thank you. So our mission is not to look backwards only. We talk about them a little bit. But our mission is not to just look backwards at my dad's career, but to take what he built and build upon it more, to look downfield, to advance the ideas that will carry this nation undivided to an even better future. And for the Kemp family and the foundation, tonight is the highlight of our year. I am so excited to be here with you. I'm so grateful that you have come. And this presentation of the Kemp Leadership Award to Tim Scott is really a high privilege. The award is given to the individual who's shown exceptional leadership in advancing that American idea. And I think you'll agree that we have the perfect honoree in Senator Tim Scott. His opportunity agenda is a model of legislative and moral leadership. On July 12th this summer, if anybody hasn't seen it, go look at the 3 speeches that Senator Scott gave on the Senate floor, talking about his own personal experience. And you will see that that heartfelt address will go down, in my opinion, as one of the most memorable and most significant personal testimonies ever recorded in Congress. We owe a great part of our success at the foundation to Tim's support and involvement over the years. So thank you, Tim, including his partnering with Speaker Paul Ryan to interview Republican presidential candidates in January of 2016 down in Columbia, South Carolina. We got Republican candidates for president to talk about how to fight poverty, how to help people get onto the ladder of economic growth and personal responsibility, while understanding that we have got to have a strong safety net. So we look forward to both of them joining us for our Kemp Forum on Expanding Opportunity Part 2 in Chicago early next year. And what an incredible time We'll be talking about welfare reform then. Tax reform is going on right now. We haven't had tax reform in 30 years. And it's not a pretty process, as everybody knows, but it is important. Economic growth is critical, and equality of opportunity. So we get to talk about tax reform, welfare reform, and what a tribute to Senator Scott that the Vice President was here with us, with us this evening. I would like to, well, the Vice President recognized some of the folks who are here. We're grateful for all of you who have come. There's a couple who I need to recognize, and they're treasures of the United States. Librarian of Congress Emeritus James Billington and his wife Marjorie are here, and he was our honoree 3 years ago. Please give a round of applause. They're sitting right over there. Thank you, Dr. Billington, for all that you've done for the Kemp Foundation and so many. You're a treasure. All right, and last but not least, I would like all Kemp family members, and Isabel, you're a Kemp family member also, all Kemp family members to stand up. I just want you to see the representation. We don't have my sister Judith or her husband Chris, or their 6 children, but Jennifer, Jeff, Joanne, Stacy, Susan, Jennifer's daughter, Babby, my boys, Marco, Benji, and Tommy. Jonah's not here. Which Kemps did I miss? Isabel Andrews, we call her Izzy. So the Kemp family is just thrilled to be here. Hugh Hewitt, thanks for coming. We'll look forward to what you're going to talk about. Next, I want to bring up Senator James Langford, and one of the things that the Kemp Foundation has done is worked with members of Congress who want to get on the ground. And Senator Langford asked if he could come with us east of the Anacostia River, where not too many members of Congress go, and Senator Scott had done it. Congressman Danny Davis had done it with us. Now Senator Todd Young had done it. And we went over there, and my good friend Ron Moten, who's here tonight, Ron sets up a bunch of events with and for me, and we partner to make sure that young people on the ground in Anacostia, in Prince George's County, in Baltimore, who don't understand the American idea in terms of the investment that people have made in them. They often think that the world's against them. And we want them to be heard. So we've had sessions actually in the United States Congress, thanks to Senator Scott, but also opportunities to take members into Anacostia to build the conversation and hopefully help with the understanding of what those real issues are. It's a part of Senator Scott's commitment to workforce development and training, and we're so privileged to be able to come alongside them as they fight for the American idea. So Senator Lankford and Senator Scott have done something really unique. They've got a thing called Solution Sundays. I'd encourage you to Google Solution Sundays, and they describe, actually they'll probably describe it, but it's getting folks who wouldn't normally sit together, whether from different religions or different races, they come together on Sunday evenings for a meal. And isn't it true that people who you're not so sure about, they become a lot less different when you're sitting down with them and learning who they are. So Solution Sundays is one of the initiatives, as well as the Senate Opportunity Coalition, that these senators have partnered on and are making sure that they themselves and their party are engaging in fighting the battle against poverty and helping build upward mobility. So I've gone too long. I need Senator Lankford to come up. He's a senator from Oklahoma, from the great state of Oklahoma, where, JC, is there a big game coming up? I think Oklahoma's playing Georgia in the Rose Bowl, right? So please join me now in welcoming Senator James Langford, who's going to introduce our honoree, Senator Tim Scott. Senator Langford. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jimmy, I appreciate that very much. There's not much I can say other than, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, because you've covered it. Getting a chance to walk through. So you said all the nice stuff about Tim Scott. So let me just say a couple of things that a friend can say. Tim Scott flunked out of 4 classes his freshman year of high school, and he's a United States Senator. Now you may say, of course he is. Depending on your perspective of a United States Senator, that either surprises you or doesn't surprise you at all. Tim and I both grew up in single-parent households. And Tim's story is a lot about his great compassion for his mom, and he's literally living his mom's dream. He's walking as a man of integrity. And if you ever get around Tim for any period of time, you'll be proud he's a United States Senator. Now, he's represented South Carolina, but he really represents all of us in our values. He's not afraid to be able to speak truth when truth is needed. And he's not afraid to be able to study and to be able to do the hard work. In fact, one of the things that he talks about is thinking your way out of poverty, doing the study, doing the work, doing what it takes, and providing an opportunity for everybody else to be able to do the same. His opportunity coalition was really his dream, was to be able to grab other individuals within the Senate and to be able to say, let's talk about what we're doing to provide real opportunities for people so that every single person in America has a shot. He and I both lived that. And he continues to be able to drive that message to people. And he continues to be able to challenge people in poverty to be able to dream and to be able to not stop and be able to take the opportunities that are set in front of them in this great nation. Now, if you're around any of the tax reform debate, and if you're in Washington, D.C. 5 minutes, then you're around the tax reform debate at least. He is affectionately called within the Senate right now one of the core 4 as the 4 main people that were negotiating all the tax policy. So next year, you can blame all this on Tim when you're filling out your 1040. But he's been a passionate advocate to say, what are we doing for families? What are we doing for people in poverty? How are we making the entire system fair? How are we simplifying the system for people in small businesses? How do we be able to make sure that we're providing opportunities even in the tax code? And he's driven that message home over and over again within the conference. As Jimmy mentioned as well, he and I started about 2 years ago now a conversation about something we call Solution Sundays. It started with a very simple question, just randomly walking up to any individual, like any one of you, and asking a simple question. Has your family ever invited a family of a different race to your home for dinner? Most of the time when I ask that question of somebody, the response that comes back is, well, I have friends of another race. To which I'll smile and say, that's not what I asked. Has your family invited a family of another race to your home for dinner so that your kids see kids of another race in normal conversation in your family, so that you have the opportunity to be able to just have conversation and develop friendships? I'm convinced that we will not get all the issues of race on the table until we get our feet under the same table. And there is a moment that we can have. What Tim and I have talked about often has been the issues of race is not some national conversation with political leaders and media around a table taking pictures. The national conversation about race is family conversations, scattered all around the country, breaking barriers down, multi-generational, and forming real friendships that are able to be in your home. For some reason in America, there are barriers of race that still exist, and we forget the entire world is still watching America to see if we can solve the race issue, because if we do, they think they might be able to. Most of the world doesn't think about race like we do. They just isolate people. When we resolve this as a nation, we'll turn things around. Though Tim and I are side by side on a lot of issues, and he is an incredible leader in our Senate, he is dead wrong on college football. You see, I hail from the great state of Oklahoma, and in a few months we'll set Georgia aside, in Clemson we'll set Alabama aside, and then Oklahoma will have the opportunity to beat Clemson on the national stage. And it'll be this great moment where Tim will call me and say, you were right, You called it way back in December, and we'll get a chance to have another friendly conversation about another great topic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Tim Scott.
That was funny. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, thank you. Let me just say to Mrs. Kemp, Jack, Jimmy, Jack, Jimmy and Jeff, yeah, all the J's. I was trying to get all the J's right. Thank you very much for continuing the work of your father, your husband, and for the Kemp clan. God bless you. It's an amazing experience to be on the stage for a foundation who bears the name of one of the guys I looked up to. It is an exciting time. I'm looking forward to talking for a few minutes up here, but before I do so, I was in the back and I could not hear everything James Langford was saying. I heard something about flunking out 4 classes. Now, the way I tell the story is a little different. As a struggling young man, when my parents divorced, let me talk to you, James, right there. From 7 to 14, I did drift in the wrong direction. All of us know that all drifting leads in the wrong direction. And yes, as a freshman in high school, I was a trouble kid. I was looking for attention in all the wrong places. I was talking in class, and I did not necessarily pay attention to all my teachers. My English teacher, my Spanish teacher, my world geography teacher, and my civics teacher. Yes, when you fail civics and you end up in the United States Senator, you know God has a sense of humor. That's for sure. You also realize, after being there for a little while, that I might not be the only person that failed civics in the United States Senate. Second thing I note, James, is that when you fail Spanish and English, no one calls you bilingual. They all call you biignorant because you can't speak in any language. So I'm not quite sure what you said about all that, but that's the way I like to tell the story. And the thing that saved me from being a high school dropout was a praying mama. I love my mother. I am living her American dream. And a mother who understood that when you get off of your knees and your child is not going in the right direction, you must find a new form of encouragement. My mother found a switch to encourage me. Now, for those of you not from the South who believe in timeout, I'm not sure who you are, but a switch is a Southern apparatus of encouragement applied from your belt unto your ankles. And I was thoroughly and completely encouraged by the time I went through summer school and found my way into the sophomore year of high school. Now, before I go on with that story, let me just, I think, Jimmy, did you listen to the introduction, Jimmy? Okay. Did he say something about Oklahoma? Was it in relationship to J.C. Watts being in the room? Well, let me just explain, let me explain to y'all, not explain, but let me explain to y'all how this works. There's like a national championship team that is defending their crown, also known as Clemson. Pray for us to survive Alabama. And then there's a Sooner team playing the Bulldogs. I'm going to pray that you guys make it through too. And then we can have not a Christian kind of bet, whatever that is. And we'll solve this issue after January the 1st. Y'all stay tuned for the rest of the conversation about how it is that the Oklahoma Sooners were beat down by some Tigers, okay? So I'm not sure what you said in your introduction, but I thought you were suggesting that you were willing to pay the price in advance to lower the price. Well, say again?
Just calling it out.
Calling it out. I like when folks call you out, Christopher. I'm not sure what you do next, but you respond by pushing into it, right? Well, let me say this. When I was a kid finishing high school, about my sophomore, junior, and senior year, obviously my freshman year was not, it wasn't outstanding. But I learned to overcome obstacles. And somewhere around my sophomore year, I met a mentor who was a Chick-fil-A operator, a guy named John Moniz, who invested in my life and taught me to be hopeful, to be optimistic, but also to take responsibility for myself. And when I think about being on this stage tonight, and I think about how I got here through the prayers and the faith and the switch of a mama, I also had the encouragement of a mentor who saw something in me that I could not see in myself. And it so often reminds me of Jack Kemp, who saw something in our nation that sometimes we don't see in ourselves. The polarization that exists today, the challenges that we face, it seems day in and day out, the onslaught of negativity, and sometimes even a sense of immorality was bridged by a leader who believed that, I think this is a quote, that democracy without morality was impossible. A part of our role as leaders is not simply to have a conversation about tax policy or investing in opportunity, an act that I've sponsored that I'm excited about. A part of our responsibility as leaders is to show up, to do our jobs, and to find our way home at 8:30. So that the most important reason that we go to Washington is not forgotten. That's your family. And I believe that our American family has to have a conversation about how we do the things we do in such a way that others are inspired and encouraged to live out their full potential. And I see that in leaders in Washington. I see that in leaders like James Langford, who is dedicated and committed to his lovely wife and his daughters. He's dedicated to the country, absolutely, but he understands that his first ministry starts at home. And if we could learn the lessons from folks like James Langford and others, Trey Gowdy and Ben Sass, whose commitment to this country started before they were ever leaders on the national scene, we would find ourselves having a very different conversation with a very different temperament about who we are and what we can do. And I believe that our future is fused together with leaders like James and others who are committed to the cause, not because it's ideologically or philosophically connected to the Republican Party or to a conservative movement, but because it is common sense that a country as great as America is requires solid leadership, not in front of a camera. That's your reputation. It requires solid leadership when there are no cameras. That's your character. And Jack Kemp lived a message publicly whose foundation was his character. It was who he was that inspired us. It's not simply that he said it well, and he said it really well. It's because we could feel the authenticity and the sincerity of his words, and they led to legislative accomplishments. It led him to go into places that Republicans hadn't gone to often, not because it was popular, but because it was right. And when I think about where we are today, and as we discuss so many issues that are important to our country's future, like tax reform, it is not the numbers of tax reform that matters the most. It's the families who benefit from our work. It's the restoration of hope and opportunity. It's spreading the paycheck a little further because you have more of your money. It's saying to a single mother whose average income in this country is around $40,000 that good news. We believe that you will make better decisions if you have more of your money. And so we're going to deliver to you 75% cut in your taxes. That's good news. It's when we look out into the crowd and we understand and appreciate the necessity of planning for your future, the necessity of planning for college, that we say to the typical American family, like Al and Robin, who make around $75,000 a year, we can say to them, good news, we're going to cut your federal taxes by 60%. And we can do this in such a way that when we look at the targeted audience, my target audience are not the corporations. It doesn't even start with the small businesses. It starts with moms like mine, single mothers who are working 16 hours a day, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day, 2 days a week, to keep their family moving in the right direction, who provides a positive role model for her sons to see someone going to work because she believes as a nurse's aide, flipping patients and changing bedpans, that there's dignity in all work. Those are the lessons of the conservative movement that engulfed my life, that changed my perspective, that took me from a paradigm of blame and entitlement to one that was filled with individual initiative and responsibility. When I think about what we're doing in the last few days with our tax code and all the meetings, it's not about what can we do for members of Congress. It's what can we do for the average person. And I like the fact that within the package, we've had an opportunity to address some of the most distressed communities in our country, where 52 million Americans live in distressed communities. And we have something called the Investing in Opportunity Act, which delays your capital gains tax for about 7 years so that people can make a long-term investment in these communities. And seeing that vehicle heading towards challenging areas, and knowing that we have over $2 trillion of capital gains that can be reinvested in the lives and in the stories of so many Americans, that at the end of our time, whether it's next year or a generation from now, at the end of our time of public service, that we can walk away and hear words like Matthew 25:21, well done. Well done, my good and faithful servant, because you didn't look out for yourself. You took a stand for those who could not stand for themselves. If there is a legacy of the Jack Kemp years, it's simply stated, well done. Because his legacy continues. There's good work being done by the family, but it's built on such a firm foundation. Let me close with one quote that I thought was just amazing. I love this quote, and it should be the quote that we who serve on the right side of the aisle remembers. And we need to say it well and share it often. Conservatives define compassion not by the number of people who receive some kind of government aid, but rather by the number of people who no longer need it. Because of men like the great Jack Kemp and so many others, there are millions of people in this country who were captive to a system of oppression financially, who are today free. That our compassionate form of capitalism has changed the very definition of poverty worldwide. We need more leaders like Jack Kemp. God bless you.
That was superb. Oh my goodness, you couldn't have captured.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate that.
I know you've got to run. We're going to present you with
sir.
the award really quickly, and then you go.
Have a good day.
So I want you to stand right here. Mom, I'd like you to stand right there. Mom, you and I, my mom doesn't know what we're doing. We're about to unveil the 2017 Kemp Leadership Award. But Mom, you want to say something first, right?
I do.
Good. I'll hold it.
I have to read this. I wanted to say to you, Tim,
Yes, ma'am.
before hearing you, but after hearing you even more, that the psalm I read for today talked about the firm foundation upon which your family stood, and we all stand.
Yes, ma'am.
And the psalm for the day that I read, the first verse was, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity."
Amen.
And that's what you're about.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, thank you. Now, I don't know what this is.
Nor do I.
I
Okay.
never know what
So,
this is.
Mom,
He does it so well, though.
Mom, Ernie Barnes, go ahead and we're going to pull this off. Ernie Barnes was my father's teammate for the Los Angeles Chargers in the 60s. And this painting is the 2017 Kemp Leadership Award. It's called Run for Glory, done in 1986. And Ernie Barnes played with Dad for 6 years with the LA Chargers. He was born and raised, in North Carolina. Close to God's country, but hey, come on. But he was raised at a time when segregation was a part of daily life, and few people of color were welcomed into the art world. While Ernie was playing football, not dissimilar to Jack Kemp, who was reading economics books, so Kemp would be reading books. Ernie, he was painting, he was drawing, and he was developing his skill. He combined those two passions into paintings that are masterpieces of movement on canvas. My dad and Ernie Barnes passed away 2 weeks within each other, and Run of Glory was on my dad's wall in his office ever since 1986. We can't give a gift to Senator Scott because of ethics rules, so this is on loan from the Kemp family to Senator Scott for your office for as long as you are
That's awesome.
in Congress.
Thank you very much.
And I have no doubt that Dad would be very proud to have this there. So I know you have to run and preside over the Senate, and you got to hustle. We will get this to you. You don't have to take it with you. It's kind of awkward. So we'll get it to you, but we're so honored to have you as our awardee. And Mom, do you have something else you want to say? You're good? Good. So Senator Scott, thank you.
Okay, all right.
You're good. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Sorry to keep you so
No,
long.
no, it's all good. It
Thank
worked
you.
out well. They canceled 9 o'clock deal.
Okay. Can you stay? Okay, good. Oh, we're going to take a picture. Is that what Mom? Yeah. We're good? Hey, what do you know? Oh, cool. All right, a quick picture with my mom. We didn't get a good one. You can sit down. They're going to bring your dinner so we can eat and keep the program rolling. Mom, would you come stand between us and in front of Ernie's painting?
In front of me?
Yeah, right here. Great.
Sylvia Mack.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, my friend. God bless you.
God bless you. Bon appetit.
Uptown Chicago.